What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and in today's video I want to wrap up day 5 from the sick week, Florida 2025. And the reason that I postponed this coming out is that drag and drives wear you out. By the time you get to the end of the week, it has been a hell of a time. And rolling into day 5, we had very little footage. We made a couple passes. We jumped for joy. Everything was great. However, the amount of video that we had narrating going in wasn't very much. So it was just gonna be like a couple clips of us racing and high-fiving, and then that was gonna be it. So I wanted to take a minute to actually kind of wrap up the entire week really quick with you guys, and see if I can give you a little bit more excitement on how awesome the week was. More importantly, how clutch day 5 was, because really day 5 was the meat and potatoes of the entire week. If you haven't watched the other videos in the series, obviously check those out. You can kind of follow our journey, which was really just testing while in competition, and you'll see what I'm talking about that day that we're leading up to this video. So if you haven't done so already and you're new to the channel, please hit subscribe. I find it appropriate to have Mark Jung's Fox body in the background, which to my knowledge is the fastest T56 supercharged car. So that's in the background, and Bob wants to run Mark down. So it's fun having both these fast stick shift supercharged car combinations out of our shop. And I think it's funny that this was on the lift, getting a new heat exchanger in the back for street use, and maybe it will see some drag and drive duty sometime in the future. Anyway, enough about that. Let's get into today's video, which is day 5 at a SGMP for the last day of sick week. All right, so day 5 was crazy, right? We went from testing right off the trailer, day -1, let's say, and we went like 861 right off the trailer, and Bob lifted a little bit early. Unfortunately, we had a souvenir after that, and I'll show you. So testing, we went 861. Bob lifted early, felt a little bit of drag on the engine, and you might notice this from the build video, but this is a crank support plate that we have. It holds a high-speed bearing right here, and on the first pass during testing, it actually moved and caught itself against the crank pulley, and that was kind of a bummer. We're gonna come back to this, but it like locked up the engine, wouldn't crank the engine anymore. It got like wedged on there, and the bearing collet locked on the hub and wouldn't allow it to turn over. It was a mess. So we had to revise that. We added some all thread to it to kind of support it and keep it off the end of the crankshaft, and then that worked out pretty good. But it also gave us a huge ambition on what was gonna happen throughout the rest of the week. Once again, if you didn't see what we were doing, you could go back to the earlier videos to see what happened next. But the short story is that the next pass out, we 8th miled better than we did in testing, and then Bob missed 4th gear. Not realizing that there was a new format taking place in sick week, which was you get a punch card, you got to make sure you get 1 pass, and that was a pretty strong indication that, hey, you might not get 2 passes during this event. We should have kind of connected the dots on that, but we didn't. Bob lifted, and we hot lapped to come back around, thinking that we could still run during our group session, and that was not the case. We got pushed off, and we had to turn around out of the staging lanes and wait for all run. Unfortunately, the all run never came, so we were stuck with the 12.0, as you saw in video number 1. Then our goal quickly went from getting an 8-second average, which is now impossible, being that the cage certification on Bob's car is 850. We are limited, handcuffed to a 850 pass, which meaning that if we went 850 every single day for the rest of that week, we would finish with like a 920, I think is what the math said, which is obviously we're not even gonna get our 8-second average that we wanted. So that really sucked. We knew we were going to be placing worse than we did when we won 6 Summer, at least time-wise. So then we moved on to day 2, and then the goal just simply became just keep shaking out the bugs in the car, right? We had to work on this car every single day on the side of the road during 6 Summer when Bob won his orange helmet. Every day we went through 3 or 4 rock farms. Every day we pulled over every 70 miles. Every day. So the 12-0 turn-in was like, wow, that sucks. But we immediately had to switch our paradigm and think, hey, you know what? If we can make it through the week without having to work on the engine on the side of the road, that's just as much of a win as turning in an 8-second average or competing to be in the top spots, right? So that's what our goal was. And then obviously get the car ready, shake it down. Bob hasn't driven it. His first pass off the trailer was his first pass since 6th summer. And then we did all these changes. And then missing the gear, we just kind of sucked. It happens. It's stick shift racing. And had we gotten a second pass, we definitely would have been able to put up a number, because going into day 2, the car became much more consistent to the 8th. And we were having, instead of gear changing problems, we were having belt problems. So we couldn't keep the belt on the car. That became the new problem that we had to diagnose and work on throughout the week. So every day we were working on the car at the track was to keep the belt from coming off. In fact, when the belt did come off at, I think, day 2 or 3, don't quote me, look at the previous videos on the playlist, that's when it grabbed this and decided to just completely F it up. I mean, you can see it's like a bat wing now. And this is 3/8 aluminum. It has some lightning mods into it, and we had 3/8 all thread, which I just flashed at you because I didn't want you to see how bent it is. And the belt came off. That's what all the black marks are here. It tried to come off. It grabbed onto this. I'm assuming it broke the belt, or it came off the pulley, the blower side, and then that grabbed onto the all thread and bent those, and then that bent this all up, and yeah, it turned into a huge ordeal. From that point forward, we had flat out gaskets who saved our ass. They sent us a steel one in case we decided to go back to that route. But instead of continuing to brace up the snout of the crankshaft, I wanted to fix the problem. I wanted to figure out, why is the belt, a cog-driven Procharger, giving us so much belt issues? We have the turnbuckle on the bracket, so like that's not moving. That was all felt really good, and we ended up putting a GoPro, which you guys saw some of those clips during the earlier videos. We put a GoPro underneath the hood so we could see what the belt is doing. Typically with a cog belt, when the engine is cold or the belt is cold, you kind of want to have like a little bit of deflection in it, right? Because then when everything heats up, it gets really tight. Not Bob's. This is a very long belt. It's the longest belt that they make in this style belt, and which we got lucky that even worked with our custom bracketry that we had to make. And it needs to be tight. It needs to be like pretty much no deflection, very little deflection. And then when it gets warm, it feels super tight. But even when it's warm and you still put a camera underneath the hood, that belt is stretching and it is dancing around all over. So unfortunately, we need to run it tight on track in order for it to live and stay on throughout all 4 gear changes. Now on the street, if Bob was to need the Procharger, meaning like he was gonna really like wing on it, it would probably be fine just running it like normal. Odds of it tossing a belt on the street are very slim. I mean, every time it happened, it was like 130, 140 miles an hour on like the 3-4 gear change. He ain't doing that on the street very often. Well, he's never doing that on the street, but you shouldn't be doing that at all, of course. But anyways, that would be the problem, and I think it would be fine. However, on track, you have to tighten that belt tension and make sure that it's happy before you moved on. We go throughout the week, everything was fine, we fixed that. We decide we're not gonna put the steel plate on until we fix the belt problem. We learned that running a bunch of belt tension fixes it, and kind of trying to find the balance of belt tension and reliability became a thing. We'd run it tighter, and then it would stay on, might loosen it up a little bit, see if you can get away with it, it would toss it. So we ended up making a bunch of extra passes trying to figure out the belt, specifically at Gainesville, where we made a pass, the belt stayed on, but the bell mouth actually fell off the blower and then got sucked into the blower. It didn't tear anything up or anything, but it acted as an air dam, like covering like this much of the blower inlet. Because the car went down, it's 60-foot of grade, it sounded good, and then it put up like a 942 at 156 or something like that, or 152. We're like, how the heck? We took out a degree of timing. How do we just kill, 17 miles an hour on this thing? And when it came back around, I opened the hood, and the bell mouth was literally just sitting like cocked up against the blower and sitting in between the strut tower and the valve cover. And I'm like, oh, well, if that started to suck air, it would just kind of close it. And we were like, but that's okay, you know, with the way that our rankings are, the way that everybody else is competing with us, there's really no need to go up there and make another pass. We're kind of going to be locked into this third place position anyway, unless the two front runners really have some mechanical trouble in the last day. And but Bob was determined. Bob became a very competitive opponent over the last couple of years, and he's like, you know what, I messed up. I did not tighten that bell mouth enough. I'm putting that bell mouth back on, and we're making another rip. I don't care if we're driving through the night again, which is nothing out of the ordinary. We drive during the night every single time. So I was like, all right, let's do it. Put the bell mouth back on, get up to the lanes during the all run, and the car went 868. And then that was when we finally had a turning point, because at OSW with the stars aligned, it went 844. We couldn't turn it in. But it went 844 and we couldn't turn it because it's faster than the chassis cert. But we had good data. So then we slowed that pass down going into Gainesville, and that's when it went the 930 something, and we're like, we're just not going to get any consistent data that's going to help us get this car tuned in to an 850 car, which is the goal. We have to turn into an 850 car. It's an 850 certed car. So going up there running the 932, it was like, or the 9 whatever, it was like, oh shit. Well, now we once again don't have consistent data pass to pass, which is what the entire week was. It was just testing. We were just testing at Sick Week in Florida, because the car was brand freaking new when we took it off the trailer, and it was just learning. The whole thing was learning. So then it goes to the 44. We turn it down a little bit, and it goes a second slower. We're like, well, there's no way that's why it went slower. Figure out the bell mouth, put the bell mouth back on, and then make a rip. And it matches the 60 foot of the 44 pass. It is like 070. I think it was 70,000 slower. It was 70,000 slower to the 8th mile, and then it went, 68. So it was 240,000 slower to the quarter. And we're like, all right, perfect. That's exactly what we needed to do. We took a bunch of timing out of the back. We took a little bit out of the front. It was, we lost 50 numbers, I think, to the 60 foot, which was a big influence on the whole thing. The last video you guys saw was Gainesville, day 4, and we finished and turned in an 868. And now we had 44 data. We had 68 data. Both of those, belt stayed on 100% of the time. Hit 100% of his shifts on time. Clutch worked almost the exact same both times. The 60 foots were almost identical. They varied a little bit, but they varied a little bit because we altered the power a little bit. But those were throughout the whole week. It took until end of day 3 and second pass of day 4 until we're like, okay, at least we have something we can combine together now. Now we go into day 5. So now we go into day 5, and the Supra and the Cobra are both well ahead of us. They both make it to day 5. As soon as we see them roll into the property, or we saw them already there, one of them beat us there, I think, or maybe both of them did. We're like, well, they're here. They just got to make a pass today. We didn't hear anything through the grapevine that they were having mechanical problems. So all we could do is apply pressure. That's all we could do. So we tried to get up into the lanes early, and after going through the laptop and calculating some DA stuff, I was like, all right, I think this is the pass. I think this is going to be it. I said, Bob, hit the shifts, don't miss 4th, and let's get after it, right? And here's the result.
yes, Bravo. No shoot needed though.
Woo!
I was
It did not work.
Wow, that little bit.
It got hung up on that, like on the burr on the end. So I stuffed it back in because I was like, oh, it should come out. And then I'll be the idiot that pops out when I'm coming back.
Right.
Oh my God.
Nice
Dude.
Does that put you in contention for?
No.
They gotta mess up.
They gotta mess
The people ahead of us have to mess up.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's like
Okay.
the Super
Pollen.
has to be
It's
like-
okay.
Lots
It's all right.
of
It's all
pollen
right.
here today.
Yes.
Man,
Hell yes.
look at that. No room for error. Okay, maybe.
A little bit, yeah, right.
Thousands.
Just a little.
You know, I don't know what you're doing with this tune.
We'll accept it.
Why we got this extra one on the end? Brother!
Now, I've had a ton of fun on these drag and drives with Bob, and it's his reactions and my reactions. They just feed into each other, and that's why we have so much fun with this. But I'll tell you what, that was the highlight of probably almost out of all the races that we've done, competed, and won. And Zach's white 3 valve, I mean, it went like 6 for 7 this year on no prep stuff. So, and then we had a lot of highs and lows with that car over the last few years. But when Bob made that pass and it went 8.50 with a 1, I was untouchable. Like, that was the 1,000th off the best possible pass that we could have made. I mean, it was amazing. That was and you know, we were hyping ourselves up that all we were there for was apply pressure to the top 2 contenders, and we did exactly that. I mean, that was the most amount of pressure that we could have legally applied to them. So it was super cool to get the 50. We knew the car had it in it. I mean, we went faster, we went slower, but we knew that car is going to be capable of becoming a deadly 850 car, and we wanted to prove it to ourselves going into 6 summer this year. So it was awesome to get that. And then we did take advantage of being early in that, putting that 50 up. We watched our competitors make their passes that qualified. And in fact, Damon with the Supra didn't. I think he went too fast. And then like time was wearing out, and we were starting to get nervous. Like, what are they going to do if they don't let Damon run? He's going to get DQ'd or what's going on? The Cobra, of course, Darren, he was... That car is that was probably one of the most consistent cars on Sick Week. He could have ran like dial your own and been competitive. So he put up his like exact average, or plus or minus 2 thou, and then he went up, turned it up a little bit, and he ended up going 750, which was cool. That's a pretty fast Whipple car, not quite as fast as this one, but still really fast, and it's, you know, legit street car. So that was cool. Then we're like, hey, you know what? Let's get back in the all run and let's start putting some of our runs together. So let's take the timing ramp that we went with the 44, the 60 foot that we just went the 50, and let's take our shift points and put them up at the higher mile an hour pass, and put a little bit closer to the dyno timing in the motor, and see what does kind of everything go together. We weren't, I would say, turned up. We're still only on 24 pounds of boost, and we have another pulley for it, and you know, some other things, some other tricks that we'll have for summer. But we definitely wanted to see what it was going to do now that we had a whole week of testing under our belt, and the results were awesome. Here's those. So overall, Sick Week was another great success. We ended up finishing 3rd overall behind Damon Motorsports in his Supra and Darren Hendricks in his 93 Cobra, which is a super badass car. He was an extremely fierce competitor, and it was awesome. But you know, there was talks about, you know, the shifter in that car, the consistency of that car, and you know, it's for us, we beat ourselves. You know, had we not had to turn in that 12 on day one, you know, bench racing, sitting on my stool, bench racing is always easy as hell. But had we not turned in that 12, we would have had everybody covered. So it does feel good knowing that we once again brought a lead of a competitive and potentially winning car, aside from the logistics of day one, that really snuffed us out. I think we unhealthily did the math. I think we needed to turn in a 10:20 on day one, and a 10:20 would have allowed our average, with all the same rest of the passes being equal, a 10:20 on day one would have gave us a helmet again. So that's a bummer, but you got to understand the format, and we didn't push hard enough on day one. Ultimately resulted in us going from being a front runner to fighting back from 12th place into 3rd place. Still podium finish, which is a great thing for a brand new car. Most importantly, did not work on it one time on the street aside from an alternator belt that shredded. We saw it had a nick in it with the whole belt dilemma with the Procharged belt coming off. We ran it. We made 2 passes with it like that, and then driving it, it eventually tore, and we had an extra one, so we just had to throw an alternator belt on it and continue on the rest of the way to the checkpoints and to the hotel. No problems after that. So overall, huge success on Sick Week 2025, and I look forward to Sick Summer, and we're going to be bringing you guys a lot of content about Sick Summer, not only during the racing, but the cars that we have lined up over the next few months to prepare them for Sick Summer, and show you what we're changing in Josh's Firebird, the twin turbo black Firebird. That's getting a bunch of cool stuff to make it more competitive in an 850 class. We have 4 or 5 others that are getting prepared to come in to be able to compete in Sick Summer. Nick's Dodge truck is getting a turbocharger installed on it, so it'll be a little bit more competitive in its classes. So we're definitely going to have a lot of fun with it this year, and we'll see how it goes. But sorry for the long format video, but that is going to wrap up the week. We had a great time. I will put, obviously, a link in the description to the playlist for all the other videos that we've already posted if you haven't seen them already. I obviously clipped some of those in here for you for your enjoyment. So you can kind of just watch this video. You kind of get the general synopsis, but we do have a ton of footage throughout every day that you can go back and watch. And before you do that, make sure you subscribe down below for the future videos, as we did dyno 4 cars. So we're going to have some of the stuff that we tested on the dyno pop up on the channel over the next few days. And we are actually getting ready to wrap up a lightning project that some OGs probably remember us getting way back in the day. It's been hanging around and it's on its way out. So we're going to get that fired up and on the dyno, and that twin turbo Firebird just left. So huge strides for the shop side of this. And we're really excited for the content this year. And weather's warming up. We're waiting for the salt to wash away, and we're going to bring the toys out and start making some really good content for you guys. So once again, subscribe down below. We'll see you guys in the next video.